Welcome to the channel, welcome to my review / overview of Codex Thousand Sons, now available for pre-order from Games Workshop and available to buy next Saturday. As ever, thank you to Games Workshop for sending this through to a number of reviewers for free so we can get our dirty paws into it and let you guys know what's behind the cover. Of course, the Grey Knights book has been released for pre-order at the same time, so it's interesting to contrast the two books. Essentially, this book is, I like it. I'm not as familiar with the Thousand Sons as I am with the Grey Knights, but there's lots of stratagems in here and lots of psychic powers and the ability to do what Thousand Sons do, but better. And for some reason, it's laid out slightly differently than the Grey Knights book. The Grey Knights book was confusing to me. It took me a while to get my head around it. The Thousand Sons books is nice and clean and simple to read, which is good for someone like me who's not 100% familiar with Thousand Sons. But yeah, it's easy to get your head round. So let's talk about the big changes. Obviously from the top, Thousand Sons now have that precious extra wound for their Rubicae. All its dust rule is gone, but it is, unless it's stated in the datasheet. So all its dust as a general rule is gone, but Rubicae and Scarab Occult Terminators, they have the all is dust rule in their datasheet. And Hateful Assault and Death to the False Emperor has gone as per the Death Watch Codex. But again, you don't necessarily need Hateful Assault because the extra attacks are rolled into the datasheets. Thousand Sons Rubicae have 2 attacks, Scarab Assault Terminators have 3 attacks. Basic Zangors have 1 attack space, but at 7 points with toughness 4 with a 5-up invulnerable save, they're a bit of a steal actually. And Thousand Sons Rubicae, 21 points each, that's the same cost as a Plague Marine. But Plague Marine's got 2 wounds at toughness 5, and basic Rubicae have 2 wounds at toughness 4, but with that 5-up invulnerable save and with All of Dust. All of Dust is, it's so long as you're getting hit by damage 1 weapons, you increase your armor save by 1. And the Terminator's the same, 40 points a model, same as the Death Guard Terminators, but again, they have a 4-up invulnerable save, but with All of Dust rule going on. The big bonus for Scarab Occult Terminators, though, is they gain objective secured. You have objective secured Terminators in the elite slot. I like it. Another big change in here is Thousand Sons Sorcerers can no longer take spells from the Chaos Space Marine book, so no more warp time going in here. No more warp timing Magnus all the way across the table. They have their own spells in this book, but there's 9 in each. There's 9 in the Discipline of Change, 9 in the Discipline of Vengeance. That's 18 spells. And if Magnus is your warlord, he knows every single spell. Magnus he can cast 3, he can deny 3. He's immune to perils of the warp, he gets +1 to cast, and he can reroll. Let's talk about Magnus for a second actually. He's got 18 wounds and a 4-up invulnerable save, same as Mortarion, but he's toughness 7 and Mortarion's toughness 8, 450 points. But just like Mortarion, he gets 3 warlord traits. He has Arrogance of Eons, so he can reroll Deny the Witch tests, and he knows an additional thing for the Kabbalistic Ritual, which we'll get to. He has Undying Form, so he reduces all damage coming in to him by 1 to a minimum of 1. And his third psychic power is Lord of the Forbidden Law, which is he knows all the psychic powers available to him. He has 8 attacks, strength 16, -4, 3 damage. He can't do sweep attacks like Mortarion. He just has 8 attacks. But he's your psychic battery at toughness 7 with a 4-up invulnerable save, movement 16, zipping around all over the place. But no more warp time for Mortarion. However, with 18 spells to choose from and lots of ways of casting spells better, the theme seems to be about getting more powers off more reliably, with lots of access to inflicting mortal wounds and lots of access to boosting characters and Rubicae units. Thousand Sons will still play the same, dependent on characters using mortal wounds instead of heavy weapons, boosting their units, hexing the enemy, pretty much more complicated than it was before. But by complicated, I mean they've got more tools in the toolbox, and really good Thousand Sons generals will have the tools they need to do what they need and will be able to deploy them when they need to deploy them. Can't turn enemies into spawn anymore, which is a bit of a shame. Anyway, Thousand Sons, they get +1 to cast their psychic powers. That's what they do. And as I said, Rubic Marines, Scarab Occult Terminators, and your Zangors, they all get objectives secured. There are restrictions for bringing Zangors now, you've got to bring more Rubikai than Thousand Sons cultists, or more Rubikai than your Zangors. You can only bring one demon prince in each detachment that you have. So the standard restrictions that we're seeing in the other codexes are now in this one. And the second new hotness is Kabbalistic Rituals. So they get +1 to cast and they get Kabbalistic Rituals. There's 9 Kabbalistic Rituals. Now the way this works is, in every psychic phase, you add up the number of points that you have depending on the sorcerers that you have on the table. And that's your points pool, your Kabbalistic Ritual pool that you can draw on. And you spend those points in that psychic phase. Any points that you haven't spent, go. And then in the next psychic phase, you add up all the points that you have depending on how many sorcerers are on the table. And then you spend those points, and then the ones that you don't spend, go. So at the start of the battle, you might have 12, 13, 14 Kabbalistic Rituals to spend. And at the end of the battle, if you haven't kept your sorcerers alive, you might only have 4, 5, or 6 points left to spend. Kabbalistic Rituals cannot be blocked. What they are is things that you can do in your psychic phase to improve your psychic phase. As I said, there's 9 Kabbalistic Rituals to pick from. They cost between 3 and 9 points, and you can only use 1 Kabbalistic Ritual in each psychic phase, and only 1 unit can be affected by 1 Kabbalistic Ritual. So you get 4 points if you've got Magnus the Red. You get 3 points for Ahriman or an Exalted Sorcerer or a Thousand Sons Demon Prince. You get 2 points for a Sorcerer in Terminator armor or an Infernal Master. And you get 1 point for a Scabrel Cult Sorcerer, Aspiring Sorcerer, Sangha, Shaman. What does that mean? If you've got your typical Exalted Sorcerer and a Thousand Sons Demon Prince, that's 6 points right there. If you bring along your Infernal Master, 8 points right there. And then every single one of your Aspiring Sorcerers in your Rubikai unit, you add those up there. So say you've got 8 for your HQ and 4 for your little guys running around in your Rubric units, you might have 12 points for your Kabbalistic Ritual phase in the Psychic phase. And they cost between 3 and 9 points. What do? Well, for example, one of them for 4 points, Malevolent Charge. If you've done a mortal wound to an enemy unit as the result of a Witchfire spell, then you spend 4 of your Kabbalistic points and you do D3 more mortal wounds. I like the way this one is worded. So you've done smite to something. It's after it goes off and after you've done the wounds, you do D3 wounds to that unit. Well, I spend 4 points, I'll do D3 more wounds to that unit. And that's 4 points. Or for example, Wrath of the Immaterium for 9 points, you can add 2 to a psychic test. Or Kindred Sorcerers, for 5 points you can add 1 to a psychic test if you really want to get those spells off. Kabbalistic Focus costs 8 points. For 8 points, after a psychic test is made for a unit in your army, that psychic power or psychic action cannot be denied for 8 points. And those are the 2 big changes to Thousand Sons. This is what they do now. +1 to cast and Kabbalistic Rituals. You've got to have a whole army that is Thousand Sons. It's got to be Thousand Sons pure, minus unaligned units, to be a Cabal and get access to Kabbalistic Rituals. You can't have Thousand Sons with something else in your army. But yeah, Kabbalistic Rituals, you can automatically pass tests or automatically not get denied psychic powers, or add to your psychic powers, or do more mortal wounds to your enemy in your psychic phase, so long as you keep your precious sorcerers alive. Then the other thing that Thousand Sons do is the cults of the Legion. Every detachment is a member of a cult. There's 9 cults and they're largely unchanged from the Psychic Awakening edition. This is when they were introduced. So if you've got 1 detachment, you can make them all from 1 cult. If you've got 2 detachments in your 1,000 armies, you can say, well, these are from the Cult of Mutation and these ones over here are from the Cult of Scheming. And the cults, and then each cult in your army has access to a psychic power from that cult. And there's also a warlord trait and a relic from that cult as well that you can give to your warlord, or to additional characters as well, because there's stratagems in here that allow you to give out additional warlord traits, stratagems in here that allow you to give out different additional relics. So like I said, largely unchanged from the Psychic Awakening book, but just a reminder. So Aspiring Sorcerers in a unit of Rubikai, they'll know Smite, they'll know 1 psychic power for the Discipline of Change, which you can pick before the battle, and they'll know their cult psychic power as well. All your demon prints, they'll know smite, they'll know 2 psychic powers and 1 psychic power from their cult as well. What psychic powers are available? Well, Cult of Time, warp charge value of 6. Select 1 friendly Cult of Time infantry unit within 6 inches of the psyker. Add a model that has been destroyed back to the unit with all of its wounds remaining. One of your Terminators destroyed, pass the psychic power on a 6, which is really a 5 for Thousand Sons. Stick a model back in there. Cult of Duplicity, Sorcerer's Facade, warp charge value of 8. Select an infantry unit or a Cult of Duplicity monster within 6 inches of the psyker and pick it up and put them back down on the battle grid more than 9 inches away from an enemy unit. Free teleportation. Or Seeded Strategy from the Cult of Scheming, warp charge value of 7. Pick a Cult of Scheming core unit within 24 inches of the psyker, and that unit can declare a charge, even if they fell back, and shoot. The way this is designed to work, the cults are, when you pick your army, if you've got a detachment, then you have a look through the cults and you figure out which one will really help you, which psychic power or which warlord trait you really want, and apply that cult to your detachment. If you bring more than 1 detachment, then you do that twice. It's a way of unlocking psychic powers that would otherwise not be available to you. So there are the core changes. Those are the core things that Thousand Sons can do. +1 to cast. They've got Kabbalistic Rituals. They've got cults. You can also upgrade characters now. There's 9 different ways to upgrade your characters, either Exalted Sorcerers or Sorcerers in Terminator armor or Aspiring Sorcerers. And these upgrades will cost between 10 and 35 points. So for example, you can pick an Aspiring Sorcerer, and for 10 points, it knows 1 additional power from the discipline it has access to. Or for 10 points, pick your Aspiring Sorcerer or Scarab Occult Sorcerer. These are the Sergeant equivalents in your Rubicai unit. For 10 points, you can give that model a ballistic skill and weapon skill of 2 up, and change their attacks characteristics for 5 to 5 for only 10 points. Bear in mind that you can put relics on your Sergeant equivalents now with a Warlord trait, and you can have suddenly a very, very smacky relic, a Sergeant, an Aspiring Sorcerer, a Scarab Occult Sorcerer buried in a unit somewhere that can do some significant damage, and having 5 attacks hitting on 2s, that's crazy. Actually, there's a relic in here where you double the number of attacks. Let me just check it. Yep, the Stave Abominus, strength +3, -1 AP, 1 damage. Only 1 damage, but that'll be, and it makes 2 attacks two hit rolls instead of 1 for every attack it has. So you could put the Stave Abominus on one of your Sergeant equivalents. That's 10 attacks hitting on 2s at strength 7, -1, 1 damage. A nice little sting in the tail there. And it only costs 10 points to upgrade him. And a stratagem. There's the expensive ones in here. Exalted Sorcerer for 35 points. This model can be given 1 additional Sorceress Arcana relic. This must be a relic they could have, but can be done even if this model is already equipped with a relic. Each relic must be unique. Or for 25 points for an Exalted Sorcerer, this model can attempt to manifest 1 additional psychic power in your psychic phase. He becomes Ahriman. He can do 3 powers a phase instead of 2 for 25 points. So you can upgrade characters. It's a nice little touch. So this is a rules mechanic that we've seen in other codexes, but in here it's very simple, straightforward. I prefer it in here. In some of the other codexes, it can get very complicated sometimes. But here they're just asking you a simple question. Do you want to upgrade a particular character? And if you do want to upgrade a particular character, here's how much it costs, and this is what the character does. Is that part of your Kabbalistic plan when you're assembling your army? It's nice, it's straightforward, I like it. Right, let's talk about the new kid on the block, the Infernal Master. He's a HQ, he costs 90 points, and he's like a chaplain in the Space Marine book. Basically, he's got access to 6 Infernal packs, but he picks 2 before the mission begins, and those Infernal packs go off on a 3-up in your command phase. He's also a Psyker. He knows 1 psychic power, he knows Smite, and 1 power from the Discipline of Change. So you've got a 90-point chaplain here, sort of. That's also a sorcerer, and he can pick from he can pick 2 from the Infernal packs. Obviously, it says, just like chaplains, you can only recite Infernal packs that haven't already been resittened. Resittened? Is that a word now? It is now. As I said, they go off on a 3-up in your command phase. Bladed Maelstrom. Select an enemy unit within 30 inches and visible to the Infernal Master. If that unit contains 6 or more models, it suffers a mortal wound. And until the start of your next command phase, that unit subtracts 2 from advance and charge rolls. Fires of the Abyss. If this pact is successful, the closest enemy unit within 15 inches suffers D3 mortal wounds. Capering Imps. If this pact is successful, select one enemy unit within 24 inches and visible to the Infernal Master until the start of your next command phase. That unit cannot receive the benefits of cover, cannot fire Overwatch, and cannot set to defend. 24-inch range there. Diabolic Savant. If this pact is successful, at the start of your next psychic phase, if your army is a cabal of sorcerers, you generate 1 additional cabal point. We talked about that Kabbalistic focus. And in your next command phase, you can reroll psychic tests taken for your Infernal Master. Glimpse of Eternity. If this pact is successful until the start of your next command phase, you can re-roll 1 dice you have rolled. You cannot re-roll any rolls related to the mission. So Glimpse of Eternity essentially is a free command point re-roll if you get it off. And Malefic Maelstrom. If this pact is successful, select 1 friendly Thousand Sons unit within 24 inches of your Infernal Master until the start of your next command phase. Each time a model in that unit makes a ranged attack, add 1 to the strength characteristics of that attack. So there's nothing in there that's completely game-breaking, but it's nice to have those extra tools in your toolbox, should you wish to put that tool in your toolbox. And it costs 90 points, and he's a Psyker as well. Stratagems. Too many stratagems to go through. You have Unwavering Phalanx, which you reduce damage by 1. It's really potent for keeping big units alive from damage to weapons. Infernal Fusillade is in here. It's cheaper, but nowhere near as devastating. Wrath of the Wronged is the new Veterans of the Long War. It's twice as expensive as it used to be, and you can no longer put it on Zangors or cultists. I do like Webway Infiltration though, which allows you to deep strike Rubikai on the table for 2 CP or 2 units for 3 CP. It's a deployment stratagem. Do I want to put these guys in reserve and appear more than 9 inches away from the enemy unit? That's a nice one. It's also Webway Infiltration. It appeals to me, the idea that the Thousand Sons are inside the Eldari Webway and that they've just popped out from it. What they're doing in there, trouble. That's what they're causing in there. Lots and lots of trouble. Right, psychic powers. As I said, there's 18 psychic powers to choose from. If you bring Magnus and he is your warlord, he knows all of them. But 18 powers, 9 in the Discipline of Change, 9 in the Discipline of Vengeance. Lots of the previous spells have been carried across, some in different names. So Doom Bolt or Glamorous Zinch. Glamorous Zinch is one that you see all the time, which is -1 to hit rolls. It's What charge value of 6, it's point at 8,000 Sons unit, -1 to hit them. It's their Miasma of Pestilence, that's what it's called. Twist of Fate is still in here. Twist of Fate, warp charge value of 8. If manifested, select an enemy unit within 12 inches of the Psyker. Until the start of your next psychic phase, models in that unit cannot use any invulnerable saves. Yes, it's an 8 to cast, but remember, Thousand Sons get +1 to the cast, and with Kabbalistic Focus, you can make that a +3 to cast, 2 for Kabbalistic Focus, plus their +1. You'd be casting it on a 5-up if you really want to. Point at a unit, you're not using any invulnerable saves. One of the new ones, Psychic Stalk, seems a bit pokey. Warp charge value of 5. Select an enemy unit that's not a vehicle, monster, or character. Roll 2d6. If the result is greater than the unmodified leadership characteristic of that unit, 1 model in that unit selected by your opponent is slain. So good for, just pick them up. Good for sniping out Outriders or some of the Tyrannid bugs because they have low leadership. Pyrrhic Flux. Add 1 to the strength of any Warp Flamer weapons. Combine this with Wrath of the Wronged stratagem, and you can have a squad of Warp Flamers auto-hitting, wounding toughness 4 on 2-ups. Or add in Malefic Maelstrom Infernal Pact to increase the Warp Flamers to strength 6. Or do both. It doesn't say you can't stack. Wrath of the Wrong costs 2 CP. You stick it on Arcana Astartes infantry unit, and when they're selected to shoot or fight until the end of the phase, each model that makes an attack adds 1 to that attack's wound roll. So the psychic power gets your Warp Flamers up to strength 5, and then the stratagem adds 1 to the wound roll. So anything toughness 4, any infantry, you're winning on 2s with Warp Flamers. Auto hit it. It's glorious. It's a glorious combo. I like it. Another psychic power, Temporal Surge, Blessing, warp charge value of 7. Select a friendly Thousand Sons infantry, cavalry, or beast unit within 6 inches of the psyker, and that unit can make a normal move in the psychic phase. It's like warp time, sort of, but basically moving twice, moving the movement phase, moving in the psychic phase. Now, as this is a review slash overview, I think I'll wrap it up there. There's too many relics, stratagems, psychic powers to go through in this overview. We will get lost in the weeds if we go deeply. So the thing to note is Thousand Sons do what they do, but do it better. That +1 to cast and Kabbalistic focus means they're getting better at getting their psychic powers off. And they have a lot more tools. They have a lot more things that they can choose to do, a lot more options. They are better at what they do, and they can do a wider variety of stuff. Instead of making Smash Captains, you can make Smash Sorcerers. There are ways to teleport units around the battlefield should you need to. There are ways to deep strike infantry in the middle of the battle. There are ways to put Rubikai during deployment more than 9 inches away from an enemy unit. Risen Rubikai, 2 CP, just put them 9 inches away from the enemy at the start of the battle when you deploy. Not being able to warp time Magnus all the way across the table was their big thing for competitive play, for match play. So losing that is gonna hurt. But what about chapter approvals for match play? Well, there's 4 secondaries you can pick from. 1 from Warpcraft, 1 from No Mercy, No Respite, 1 from Shadow Operations, and 1 from Purge the Enemy. And the Warpcraft one is actually okay. It's a bit like Spread the Sickness from the Death Guard book. Spread the Sickness in the Death Guard book, pick an objective, spread the sickness on it, get 3 CP. The same here with Warpcraft. Pick an objective, pass a psychic action with a warp charge of 4, gain 3 CP, and then the next turn you do it, it's 4 CP. It's a warp charge 4, then a warp charge 5, then a warp charge 6, then a warp charge 7. So long as you can complete that psychic action on an objective, you get 3 CP. You mutate the landscape. It's a Warpcraft one. The No Mercy, No Respite one is quite good as well, called Wrath of Magnus. You can select this objective if your opponent has 1 or more psychers. So it's situational. You're picking it if the army you go up against has got a psyker in it at least. And let's face it, there's not very many armies out there that can out-psyker your psychers. And you score 3 victory points at the end of the battle round if more enemy models than friendly models were destroyed in this battle round as a result of psychic powers. It's going to be hard to think of an army out there that can actually kill more models in the psychic phase than Thousand Sons. So that one might be an auto-include as well, because you should be able to do that in turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, turn 4, so long as you kill more models in that battle round. It should be a 15, so long as the enemy takes a psyker. Anyway, I keep promising to wrap this up, so let's wrap this up. Thank you for listening to this review slash overview. Thousand Sons do what they do, but they're scarier now with more mortal wound output. Yeah, I'm very interested to see how they play on the tabletop. Happy wargaming.